The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Melanie Kleemann, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Melanie, and welcome to The Only Constant. We've been speaking about this episode for more than half a year, I think, and and had a couple of postponements, once on you, once on me, and now I'm just so happy that we're finally getting to do this recording. So, welcome to The Only Constant, Melanie Kleemann.
Hello, Lasse. Glad to be here. Great we made it now, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations.
So,
thanks for having me, Lasse.
Yeah, of course, Melanie. You have a lot of great insights and experiences that I'm really excited to dig into and explore the world of AI transformation and change with technology together with you. So on that note, Melanie, will technology, do you think, transform the world on its own?
Wow, big question.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think what really will transform our world is the people in the world and our leadership, the way how we handle, for instance, technology and what we are deciding, how far technology can go and how we lead the technology. So I strongly believe technology as itself will not change the world. It's really we and our leadership who will transform.
But we had something like the tractor, for instance, coming in and transforming everything, right? That was a technology. Wasn't that the technology-driven transformation?
What was coming in?
The tractor.
The tractor, yeah.
So we did have something like that where technology changed the world, right?
Yeah, true.
But you don't think the technology like AI can do the same?
Exactly. I was behind AI and I was thinking, this is what all the people are discussing now. And I strongly believe that if we are taking the right decisions and not let go AI doing their stuff and delegating the responsibility to systems or to AI, then it will be the people. It will be us transforming the world.
But what does that? But I'm just curious about what does that actually mean? Because in the end, it is about the technology comes in and that becomes a normative to do this change, right? So to adopt and something like that, right? Because if no one had adopted the tractor would not have transformed the world. That's what you're getting at, right? To some extent. But we still need the tractor, don't you? So isn't it the tractor that actually came in and transformed the world?
Yeah, I'm thinking if you see how, or if I observe working now with the executive teams together, how the most of the people are acting to AI, I think there are still some doing it maybe the wrong way. So believing everything which comes out from AI. But I also see that the maturity now recognized you cannot take everything from artificial intelligence as given, and you also cannot really delegate our responsibility. So you need to take and you need to have this ownership when you work with the technology.
What is the wrong way? Now you said it again. If they take it the wrong way, can you explain a little bit about what the wrong way is?
Yeah, the wrong way is, for instance, if you just put everything into the AI and then you take the result as given and you are not putting it in context, or also discussing and reflecting the consequences out of it. So this is what I mean. You need to act or to co-create together with AI. And this is what I mean. You can do really wrong. You just delegate this responsibility and take everything for given. And this would be definitely not the way it should work. And this is what I also observe working with the executive people together, that the majority now more and more recognize, working now with artificial intelligence, that we have to take the ownership. We need to put things in context and also being clear about the consequences.
So it sounds like you have some kind of, because you say there's some things we need to do this. Okay, that's good. But it sounds like you're also then implying some kind of genuinely human or genuinely leadership, traits that we need to keep there. You're saying we can't do this because, but I'm just looking for the becauses. What are the becauses? Why can't we just do that? What is it that is genuinely human? What do we need to keep in human hands?
In human hands, definitely the leadership, which means that we take ownership for the results, that we make clear for people what truly matters, what will be changed or what changes, but also what stays as it is. If you see what I mean. So this is what I think we need to consider working together with AI.
But how do we decide what should stay what it is when you're in a rampant technology upheaval?
Yeah. I'm just remembering working with a team actually on a technological transformation. And then, of course, the most people are unsure about all the things which are not clear. And of course, if you give some parameters or framework, what's decided, then the team knows, okay, these are the things really matters. These are our priorities. And this is kind of a framework, like a football field, where we need to act within that framework and can explore it or also develop some completely new stuff. And and these are the things which are settled and we cannot change. So I think you need to be clear what are your priorities and what are your frameworks you are working in, and what can really be an innovative and an explorational approach you can take from that.
I've had a lot of Germans on the podcast, and I also have a lot of German listeners. But I just want to, but I always do this joke anyway, that Germany is, the one, always the culprit of no digital transformation. You know that joke, right? You've seen it, of course. So when you as a German say that, we have this playing field and that cannot change, people will be like, oh, maybe that's your German imagination. What do you say about that?
Can you say that again?
That you say you have this playing field. This is the field that we're playing on. You say that won't change, but some people in like Silicon Valley will say, well, the whole playing field is a flux. Yeah,
that's true. But as you said, maybe the Germans feel more secure if you give some parameters, what they really can, where they can work within that framework. But you are asking about what about the Silicon Valley if they are working with AI and say you have the full playground to do what you want.
Yes, exactly. But I'm just trying to figure out what is that we get if we go one route or the other. So what if a leadership comes to you, Melanie, and asks you, what road should we take? Should we take the German steady engineering route, or should we go the full, move fast and break things? What would you advise them to do? What would you do to figure this out?
Working with AI.
Yeah, working with AI or any technology that comes out after this or disruptive technology. What should companies actually do?
Yeah, exactly. You would never do that by your own. I mean, you do it maybe in order for a company because you want to develop something, right?
Yes.
And from my point of view, I would give them some, or this is how I worked always. I made clear for them what is clear, and saying clearly what is maybe not clear, and what we are able to explore. Because from my point of view, AI is making also your leadership visible. It exposes weak ownership and unclear decisions. And I see it like this, that strong leaders always use technology really in a conscious way. And putting that or using it in a conscious way means for me also that you're clear. Of course, you can explore around and put everything in without any parameters. But if you want to have something you really can use in the future, you should also be clear about the priorities, the things you want to change and can change, and the things which are fixed. And of course, there can be always fields where you say, okay, explore it. But in the end, when it comes to execution, and this is what it is all about, when you want to execute the stuff, you need to be clear what is possible to execute and what is not. And this is for me really using technology in a conscious way.
So using it on a contextual, purposeful, background to some extent, right?
We're normally not doing it without any purpose. So in most of the case, you're using it, or at least me as a leader, using it within a business, right?
What is ownership in corporates? What you said, ownership, and I really like that concept. I think a lot about ownership. I also think a lot about it, and I spoke to Eva Swarovska about it in the last episode. That there's this whole, let's make some new executive layers. Analysts always come up with new executive layers, right? And then I start discussing what is actually ownership. What does it mean to have ownership of things? And I just what is your opinion on ownership?
That's a good question, because I think also people see it in different ways. My interpretation, or my way of how I see my ownership, is that I'm taking ownership. For instance, if I make clear or give the team clarity when things are uncertain. Because from my point of view, what I experienced across all the industries, all the roles I was in my leadership career, people are not really afraid about change as such. What people are really afraid about is this part of the uncertainty. So what helps people going through this unknown, this period of unknown, is if you as a leader take the ownership, not just let it go, take the ownership and make clear together or for the team what is said and what is clear, because not everything is unclear if you're leading in the unknown. So there are still things, figures, feedback from customers, feedback from coworkers, priorities in your business plan. So make clear what is really set as a point, and then also make clear what is really unknown or unclear, and then define the roles and responsibilities, who need to take the ownership to clarify all the open points, the open and unclear stuff.
I actually like that. I think because I would have thought about responsibility and accountability and a hierarchy to some extent, right? That in the end, the ownership is to have the accountability and to some extent be able to from that delegate the responsibility, right? But what you're saying is clarity, and I think maybe that is the big conundrum right now for leadership, isn't it? Clarity, and with AI coming in. There's some sort of leadership anxiety connected to that, isn't there? So if AI comes in and promises to disrupt everything, and people see that it can do things, there's a lot of different industries right now where they're sort of nervous about what's going to hit them from AI, and it's unclear. So is it possible for leadership to sort of be leadership? If you say, leadership is ownership and ownership is clarity, providing clarity. If you can't provide clarity to your employees, what you going to do?
If you can't, or if you can?
If you can't.
If you can't. I mean, this is what I mean. You need to take the elephant and put it in pieces. There are always things which are definitely clear, and you can put in the ground, and there are things which are unclear. And if people, for instance, are unsecure what happens with them or with their jobs, I would not say AI is taking away our jobs, but it's definitely completely changing our jobs and also the way how we do them. And it's also changing tasks. And if you if you take it like this, what the leader's task is in the future, you still will need leaders. Maybe the amount of leaders will change, but definitely the way how you lead will change. And what I mean with that is, for instance, you cannot delegate your responsibility to a system or to experts or to AI. This is not, of course, possible. But I see also that we will need more of the human side of leadership, much more than today, because today there is a belief in I don't know if it's a typical German thing, but there is a belief in most of the leaders that you need to have all the answers as a leader. And this is not true. First of all, I see I see your role as a leader more about the responsibility and not about having all the answers. Leaders don't need to know everything, but of course they need to own in the end the decisions.
Yeah, but you just said, that you said, need to give the answers, but you also said that you shouldn't give the answers. They can't do that. That's not the point. But you still said that they have to bring clarity. So
exactly.
What is the difference here, Melanie?
Between the clarity and
the answers.
Not having all the answers. Yeah, for instance, what can be clear? It can be clear that we want to grow in the next 3 years. We want to double the turnover. So that's a fact, for instance. That we have 3 launches with a new range collection. It's a fact. Our customers don't like the variety of our offer. Our customers give us in 4 years in a row bad feedback to any phase of your journey, right? These are facts guiding us. And we need to react on if we want to be, or if we want to stay competitive. And then there are things maybe which are not clear. For instance, what can be the solution of future service solutions? Yeah? In which context ever. And then you can explore, of course. You also can use AI or other technologies. And in the end, it comes then somewhere to the point that you need to take decisions. If your team is presenting solutions, or if they ask you, can we go that direction or this direction? And sometimes you as a leader, you don't know. And then you also can say, I don't know, but we can figure it out together. And this is also for me part of taking ownership. Not trying to give an answer and maybe also limit the team or maybe the solution, but also saying, I don't know, but let's explore it together.
So the clarity is actually the problem statement to some extent, or the demand statement. What do you want? What do you need?
But also making clear what's decided and what is not decided, or what is clear and what is not clear, because often people are so confused because everything is unclear and one change is following the other change. And then also you as a leader have the responsibility, and you need to take the ownership also to divide really. So, okay, let's put the facts on the table. What is really unclear and what is clear? And then of course, it's also important to say when things are unclear, but it doesn't mean that you as a leader have all the answers. You also can say in a very concise way also, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. And I think this alone, and I see it also across lots of different roles I had, this alone gives people orientation. And this is what people need in this uncertainty. Orientation, they do not expect that you as the leader know all the answers. But what they need is really orientation. Okay, I understood. This is our goal. This is our vision. This is clear. And this is where we go. And we know also this is what our customers love. We will stick to that. But this is where we get clear feedback they don't like. And they do not longer accept because there are others offering, for instance, better, quicker, more comfortable service. And this we need to change. Maybe we don't know yet how, and we don't know what AI will bring within the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe my job will disappear in the way how it is in an org chart today, but the task for leading people or the task to build a new customer experience, for example, will be still core part of a business.
So what
the question is more what you are responsible as a leader later on. So you will in 3 years from now, you will coach and facilitate and guide lots of autonomous teams.
But what will then? What should a leader be then focused on? Is it there's a tendency, and I remember Richard Rommel wrote about that in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and I think I also quoted this many times actually on the podcast before. It's that when things are unclear, we tend to look far ahead. So people are like, oh, but we will have a fully autonomous blah 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 in 10 years. But he says that you need to have a proximate objective instead, right? So does it make sense to look far ahead when things are unclear? Are we getting very close to home right now?
Oh, totally. It makes totally sense. And I think you also should explore the future in a sense of do your scenario planning, because if you are leading through the unknown, of course, you shouldn't wait and being surprised. But what is coming up, I think this was the old way of leading because we were not used to so much unclarity we live in nowadays. You should do your scenario planning. You should do your foresight to see, okay, what could be possibly come up in the future. And maybe you have 2 to 3 scenarios, and then you feel much more prepared. You are maybe not that surprised. And this gives also people a lots of clarity. So I remember a couple of years ago, we were exploring, you would not do that maybe nowadays, but a couple of years ago, I mean, maybe it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we were creating the IKEA Germany business plan up in 10 years. Maybe you would not dare to look in 10 or 15 years in the future, but we did that. And we were maybe 12 years ago. Yeah, what if our parcels get delivered by drones? Yeah, or what if there are thousands of cars driving without the driver, so autonomous cars and all those things, of course. Or what about the Amazon store in the US, completely automated without any people or staff? In the beginning, I remember very well, we all were looking at that store and thinking about, wow, what a great development. But then the longer and the more you discuss that and also develop your whole business plan, you recognize, yeah, but this is not something really matching our values. And this is what I mean before. Maybe I was unclear on that. You're always acting within kind of a framework. And this is so important to bring back in minds for the people also, for the leaders, but also for the people. We have our vision, we have our mission, and we have also our values. And then you need to put that all in context to find your best solution and also to give this kind of certainty. I mean, a vision and also company values, for me, it was always a guiding star. But I also learned you, as a leader, have the responsibility to make that clear and clear again. So it is important to make clear what matters, what changes, and maybe what stays also the same. And for me, it was always the vision and our values, and then exploring around what's possible. And if you do this kind of scenario planning, maybe it's a little bit strange looking 10 or 12 years ahead, but do it from now. The development was never faster than these times, especially with technology. So if you look just 2 or 3 years ago, you can imagine maybe you as a leader work mainly with autonomous teams. So what is then your kind of leadership?
But why didn't it happen? Why didn't we get drones when you could see it already 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, this is future scenario planning,
Yeah,
right?
but my point is, right now there's so many people looking at things in the future. We're seeing things right now with AI, right? But we could also see things. The thing I just noticed there is you could already see things 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And there are some drone deliveries somewhere in the world, right? We do have some of these things. Somehow it's not autonomous cars, but it's not at the level you back then you thought this was 10, 12 years ago. Maybe this would this transformation. Why didn't it happen that way? So why don't we have drones? Why don't we have autonomous deliveries today? What has happened?
We have instead, I would not say we don't have it, but it developed maybe in a little bit other direction. What we have now, for instance, is these autonomous warehouses.
Yes.
So I think what we managed is the first step.
Close to home.
Pardon?
Something close to home. The closest step, right?
Exactly. We were thinking about the last mile. Maybe we are not there all over the world. In some markets, it might be happening. But what we did is definitely we can see we have kind of autonomous warehouses. Let's put
because that's what a company can do, right? The other thing is a societal transformation, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. And these will change, of course, much more time. And you also need to have some regulations. I mean, was it Tesla first brought up these autonomous cars? And then, of course, the people recognize what also can happen if you have lots of autonomous cars. I mean, there were a lot of mistakes happened in the test period. So maybe it takes longer time, and also it takes time people accepting that change. And if you think about, would you like to live in a world where everything is autonomous? Exactly, autonomous. Would you live in that kind of world? I remember it was also, I think, 10 years ago. Some people from our management team, we went to Silicon Valley, exploring this kind of startup mentality and, getting all this, starting 10 times a business from scratch and failing, but still people are so motivated there and full of energy with their next idea and their next startup. And we, of course, recognize it's a cultural thing. Of course, we maybe don't have in Germany, definitely. But I remember we were visiting a lot of companies like Google and whatever. And there are some people explaining us extremely proud. I mean, it was, I think, 10 or 12 years ago. And they were explaining us, you know what? Really proud. I don't need to leave my house. I can order my food. my dinner, but I also can order all the food and all the stuff. Normally, I was used to go to a supermarket and buy everything. So, and I remember like today how proud she was explaining this. And I was a little bit shocked. So, okay, how boring would that be? And how would we isolate as a society if everybody is just sitting in the house and you have your Netflix, you can watch what you want, you have your world accessible from your home. It's really like she said, and it's also today like that in Germany. I don't need to leave the house if I don't want to.
No.
But
no friction.
Absolutely no friction. And this is also something we explored in a management team some years ago. Yeah, the customer always want the easy buying process, the great experience with no friction. I remember also it was part of our business plan for a while. But it's not like this. It's maybe some kind of frictions they don't expect during their journey. But there are also some maybe we cannot avoid because we are human beings. And this is...
And you also want some stickiness, right? To when you're a business, you want stickiness with the customer. So if it's just if there's no interaction, are you really important, or could someone disrupt you easily, right? There's something moving against it. There's a balancing act there, right? And also, but I think it's interesting what you're saying with technology being so defined by people who just wants to be in their own home. And are we being defined by some tech bros that we don't agree with and we don't understand? And do they live in a different world than we do? And is it so easy to be normative, right? The whole cultural thing, right? You said that you said more human side earlier as well, right? That and I think the warehouse thing was possible because you were able to make it clear. You were able to define ownership. You were able to define decisions and
true.
say this is the warehouse has a limit and it has a purpose, which is something in, something out, bam, bam. Whereas the whole of society, like making drones and autonomous cars, is way more ambiguous and is way more culturally bound to say, do we want to go out or do we want to eat out? Do we want to, or what is the culture here? The macho culture. Can a macho culture have a self-driving car, for instance? I don't think anyone's ever asked that question, but now I just asked it on the podcast. So I just think that it's interesting that some things are ambiguous and might stay ambiguous for that reason. While I really like the warehouse example because we got that. That's true. We ended up there because that could be defined. So definition drives transformation.
Exactly. It's the parameters which were maybe much more easier to define in a warehouse than in the total society. And it's the first step where you can test and try. So sometimes I think we are also too ambitious. And looking back, we were not so wrong with our assumptions, but maybe too ambitious that we are believing it will happen all in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. That's the thing, and that's also a very interesting perspective with AI right now because things are moving fast. But the weirdest thing in the world right now is being, as I am, constantly so entrenched and delved in. I'm totally into what's going on in AI all the time, and I live in this AI craze. But then going into a shop anywhere and there's no AI. Going into my fridge, there's no AI. Going into my car, there's limited AI. But
you think so?
But there is AI a lot of places, I know. But there's no generative AI. The world is not changed yet.
It is.
It is.
It is, Lasse. It is. It depends on from which perspective. Maybe you, as the AI and tech guy, maybe you believe huge technological change in. I don't know what you're thinking about, but from my point of view, there are two groups. One group is always arguing, we are so slow in Germany. We have not adapted to AI. And then there are another group saying, no. I think we are doing it quite well. We have defined the use cases and we started with defining the use cases, not like in the past, just we need to have AI, it's fancy now. No, we have started to define the use cases and then we take it from there. But what I mean is that I see right now AI everywhere and it really bothers me I'm in Munich today. I traveled from Frankfurt to Munich. I went out of the house with my suitcase, walked down the street to the rail station. And then there are some advertising on the Litfaß, how do you say it? The spotlights? No, the big lights. And everywhere you can read these AI marketing texts.
Yes.
And then you come to the railway and then you're waiting for your train. And then there are the next big city lights. Really, the whole journey from Frankfurt to Munich, I was seeing this AI way of communication everywhere. If you're on LinkedIn, there's no message, no post.
But the train conductor who tested
the comments are also.
but the one checking your ticket, he was a person, right? That was not an AI robot coming through the train, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's this weird, there's marketing and AI and messaging and messing with our brains, but so much of the physical world, so much of the things that are actually hard production is still manual. Absolutely.
This is what I mean. It depends on from which angle you are looking in. And this is what makes me a little bit, it bothers me because I think, it's marketing. I thought it's the creative part of our world. So how can it be that I read everywhere these AI sentences, which are all this?
I think it's the weirdest thing in the world, right? You don't need 100 AI copies, right? You need one really good copy. You need to think about it. This is your one shot. So you're spending 200,000 euros on I don't know your market your billboards, right? But you only want to spend 5 cents on an AI phrase for it. Why are you saving money there? What's wrong with people?
This is what I mean. So it depends on the angle. And then if you, for instance, say, okay, now this is the area which is not defined by purpose, values, vision, whatever, you can explore. And then you will be surprised coming back to the room and the whole team were asked to explore, and then they're presenting by themselves what they explored. And if you work a lot with large language models, you smell already the language, right?
Yeah.
They're coming into the room. I don't know, maybe it's a German thing, but it was not really exploring by their own ideas. It was all done together with ChatGPT. And this is totally fine when you do that. It's always also my answer. It's great if you use it to accelerate, but don't start with the AI and even make no own assumptions. And then you just hand me over that paper where I can read, okay, it's exactly the result. Maybe you change 3 words in it. You see my point. And so always depending on the angle you're looking at it, and it's relatively. But of course, if you're a tech guy, I know there could be much more things possible. But why is everybody now just focusing on these large language models?
My problem is that with that exact thing that you're mentioning there is that I don't see the observations behind the AI. Maybe the AI did observe something in the document you sent it to, but I need you to make some observations as well. We need the responsibility and the accountability to be human. And I want to know, Melanie, what did you actually see when you were seeing this problem? When you went to visit the warehouse, what did you actually see? Yeah, okay, I can see that AI regurgitated that this could be issues or this could be something we should do. But what did you see? And I want your scribbled notes first. And then we can always ask AI to write those up neatly afterwards, right?
Yeah,
but let's not make AI write it up neatly before we discuss it. Let's discuss your observations first, right? And I think, we speed up the final delivery, but we shouldn't speed up the initial one. The brainstorm needs a brain, right? Doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And this is what I mean exactly in the beginning of our conversation, that you need to take the responsibility also for the results. So you cannot just take the stuff which is how it comes out from AI. You need to be clear with your context, the preconditions, and so on. Yeah.
There's this. I also want to speak to you. With your background, I want to also speak to you about digital transformation, because there's these notorious articles about 90% of digital transformations fail. There are tons of books out there saying something like why digital transformation fails and blah 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 blah. So I'm gonna ask you, what have we learned from failed digital transformations, and did they really fail, or were they just overpromised? Let's discuss that a little bit.
I remember also a McKinsey report. I think it's, in the meanwhile, I think it's 7 years or 10 years old. Still, they are used. This report is still used when it says 70% of all digital transformations failed.
Yeah.
Everybody's still believing that. I'm not sure if you really would do now a new survey or follow up, whatever, if it's really like this. But I think it has to do with maybe too big expectations, sense of changing people's behavior. Because you cannot start with the technology. I think these were one thing where we made lots of mistakes. But first of all, I think the most important is in this digital transformations, you need to know why you're doing that. And you also consistently need to communicate that. So why do we need to change? For instance, if you talk about retail, why do we need this omnichannel transformation? It is important that you make clear for the people it's because of the customer's expectations and customer needs has changed. And also the competition has changed. And you need to constantly repeat that, and you need to break it down in very, very, very small steps, not only repeating and explaining that we need to change, but also why. And you need to show as the leader, the top management really, this is nothing new. You need to start in the top management with this kind of transformations. But then you also need to walk the talk. through your daily small habits, you always need to prove it, because people observing, of course, the top management, and if they are not acting accordingly, also your team will not, the people will not accordingly. So it's the small everyday decisions. You cannot say, for instance, we are doing that because we are customer centric, or we want to become customer centric because it's important. The world has changed and so on. You need to live it. If you just say it on the Big Bang presentations and big conferences, we want to become customer centric, and therefore we are now going omnichannel, and the customer is our master. And when we now develop new products or new services, we really start from the customer needs and develop the processes backwards. And then you're sitting 2 days later in a meeting around last mile, coming back to that, for instance. And then, of course, the drones are not possible yet as a solution, but then let's have a look why we have so many damaged goods and why we have so many missing goods on our last mile. And then you have two options to adapt your last mile process. And then the top management decided in the end, yeah, we will go for that process because we realized this one is much cheaper. Or it's much easier for us as a company to do the process in that way. And this is exactly the opposite from the small behavioral change you as a leader need to do and to act in the words you're promising. Because immediately your team realize, okay, it's maybe not so important as we heard it 2 days ago. You see what I mean?
They become incremental changes possible, the art of the possible, more than the strategic goal of digital big transformation. Digital transformation doesn't exist anywhere. No one owns it. Maybe that's the problem.
And this is another dimension. Definitely, it's a huge word, and a digital transformation. I was talking about in another podcast about that. The majority of leaders, or also the top management, introducing a digital transformation, they underestimate the cultural impact it has. Because if you want to become omnichannel, for instance, taking that example, this is a transformation in every little cell in your company. It's not just like this. And we are focusing very often in these transformations too much on the quick wins. Of course, the top management and the board want to see the quick wins first. And of course, you need to deliver a quick win. But you shouldn't focus only on that quick wins, because then you can, of course, present some shiny figures, but it's not telling the truth, because changing people's behavior, it has to do with consistency and repetition all the time, and also leading by a good example.
Oh, repetition, that sounds so boring, Melanie.
Yes, I know.
That doesn't sound like data transformation presentations I can do in, big crowds and people are like, whoa, we did, it sounds like, repetition. Do I really have to tell these accountants again how we're doing this? Oh, yeah, you do. Yes, you do.
Yes, but it's not that you always explain it the same way. And I think this is the difference in it. It's not that you're using, happens actually a lot, that you are using the same presentation every time for every audience, you're just doing this front presentation. So what I miss very often is that we start from the beginning involving the people who are the change.
But at the same time, you start by talking to C-levels on the decision. You don't involve the people immediately. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I led, the most successful transformations are always these, where you involve the people from the beginning. And you also can involve your C-level team from the beginning. Maybe not on the decision we are doing it now. This is maybe coming from a board decision. We are becoming now omnichannel, of course. But for the rest, you definitely should and you could involve also the C-level, because then it's felt it's my, or I was part of this.
But my point is, getting all the people in the room and sitting down in a circle discussing, that's not possible either. It ends up being incremental, doesn't it? In the end, there's this, what is it? Culture. What does culture eat for breakfast, right, Melanie? strategy, right? That's favorite dish, right? With some milk, cereal, right? Strategy cereal. But so it's really it's just, I think it's the problem with digital transformation sometimes is that it becomes a project as well, right? It becomes something people call it a project, where really it's a vision more than a project, because projects are sort of bound to people's careers, right? And people are, what is it? Ordinary C-suite is somewhere 7 years, 6-7 years, then you have to move on, or isn't that the cycle? I think, and is it even possible to do? Because cultural changes, they're slow. It's like tectonic movements, people's minds, and all that takes time. So isn't it just time that ends up killing digital transformations? Do they even fail? That's the point. That's my question. That was one of my questions, right? Do they even fail, or do they just fail to be on time?
Exactly. I would not say they are failing. It's more it takes longer than people expecting, especially often the top management expecting. Because you said something right. I remember very well in a board meeting or in a management team meeting, where somebody on next to me said, "Wow, I'm so glad when next year we are done with that transformation," because it was mentioned in the business plan, so it's the 3-year business plan. And I was like, are you sure with that? Because for me, it was clear it will be also in the next 3-year business plan apart. We are handle it in the beginning, I think, very often as a project, and we are underestimating how much time it needs, because especially if you have a digital transformation, you're figuring out on your journey that maybe what you have planned is not possible because your tech stack is a mess, or, and it was the transformations with the most postponings, I would say, I've ever experienced, and especially when it comes down also to your culture. It takes time. These were completely underestimated. And then when you think you managed now, and all the leaders are on board, everybody has maybe also adapted the behavior, the little things, and then what do you think what happens then?
But it just means, there's this...
The management will change.
Yeah, exactly. But it also, it just sounds like, it ends up being very close to home, right? Change and transformation ends up very close to home all the time, because in the end, it will be incremental. It will be something where it's a balance between clarity. What can we define? This person saying in 3 years we'll be done. I'm looking forward to it. We'll be done with the thing that we have defined, we have clarity on, right? I own this project. We're coming back to the things we spoke about in the beginning, right? So we own this. But at the same time, you say plus ambiguity, humans, culture, right? So it ends up always being something that changes again. And then we end up being in these smaller things that we can move, what is possible to move. And then... But in the end, to get my point, there's something working against it here. There's something working against the ownership here as well, right? You can't own the project. That's what you just said. But leadership is about owning. So how do you lead digital transformation? And I think right now that is, with the context of this conversation, it's an almost impossible question to answer, Melanie. But because now we've said ownership is clarity and definition, but also ambiguity and culture that breaks the clarity and definitions. So how do you own a digital transformation? How do you own an AI transformation?
I think also not one person can own it. This is the point. You also need to be clear in an organization that everybody needs to deliver their part, right? So it's not possible that... I know that were also some power fightings in the beginning when these digital transformation topics came up. No, I'm the owner, or I'm the owner. So in that sense, and this makes it maybe also so difficult, that the ownership is splitted across departments. Of course, there need to be one. Quite often is it the CEO who needs to take the final decision. And this has to do for me also with ownership, and also if
with accountability as well, right? Yeah.
Yes. And also if things are going wrong, cannot delegate the responsibility. You can maybe say, okay, I will, what happens? Unfortunately, very often in the beginning, I hand this digital transformation over to my IT department or to my IT guy, because I feel so unsecure as CEO about all this technical stuff. You can do that for a part, but you cannot delegate the responsibility and the result.
No, because we need to have more people owning and defining it. That's what you said, right?
This is what I'm saying. Exactly. It cannot only be one department, but also as a leader, you need to take the ownership if things are going wrong or right. So if the things are going wrong, maybe because you delegated stuff in a system or to one department, what is not possible to delegate from your responsibility point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This means the transformation really becomes this cross-company cultural thing, and
yes.
not at all about technology, not even about leadership, but about something more than that, involvement or something. What?
Involvement, also culture. What you mentioned before. I mean, if you want to become, for instance, a digital-first company, you also need to change your culture partly, depending on where you are coming from. Yeah, everybody was talking at that time. We need to. Technology is changing things so fast. We also need to be more agile. Agile was buzzword everywhere. But for instance, I worked also in a company which were led very hierarchical, and I would also say in a way maybe old-fashioned in the sense of only really the top manager can take and will take decisions. These are also things which are completely slowing down your organization, but also your transformation. It will never happen. Because if you're only turn in cycles and you need to delegate for any answer up to the top management, they become the bottleneck of the whole transformation.
But in the end, they'll be there, right? But there's always this, agile. In my opinion, honestly, it's just a fractal of waterfall, right? So you have waterfall, and then, or at least you have waterfall saying we want to do this, we want to build something like this, and then you can make agile projects underneath. There's always a board on top that's sort of decision making, not agile at the same. Agility is actually built for exactly the discussion we've had, right? That things are moving all the time between being defined and being ambiguous, right? And that's why there is sprints and defined sprints and waterfalls, and then there's also agile on top of it. Everything in the end is maybe agile or maybe there's no. I don't think, and I'm always. This is another thing. I'm always flabbergasted by these, public sectors being agile. Public sector organizations being agile. I'm like, hey, you're governed by the law. It's not like it's not complex. You don't have to invent a new product. You just have to do what the law says. Why should you be agile? It doesn't make any sense, because it means you don't know what the output is supposed to be. But hey, it's right there in the law. It's not something you make up. Anyway, that's another discussion. But I think that's agility is just when it makes sense. I've never. I don't know.
Makes sense. Exactly what you said. When it makes sense.
Yeah.
And this little sentence makes the difference. I remember a huge retail company decided, because now we want to become digital and we need to become agile for that. So they implemented, or tried it for a long time, to implement the org model from Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked, why? Yeah, because we need to become agile. Yeah, but who is saying that the org model of Spotify will be the right way to organize a retail organization? So, it starts with the why, with all this transformation. Also, you need to be clear why, But what I find interesting, because you are, of course, from the company you're working in, but also this huge amount of people you already talked to, have you come across any company or example where you would say these were a good example, at least, maybe not best practice, but a good example how they managed their transformation, their company transformation?
Yeah, I have actually. I was really impressed by a company a Danish company who I spoke to some years ago. I think it's 5 years ago. I just had a quick chat with them. But what they'd done was they were renting out building machinery. I can't remember the word for them, but big machines. And they sort of they tagged all of them with QR codes and geotagging and all that, and know where they were. And then they rented them out. And then at the same time, they created a marketplace for renting them out. And at the same time, they made that marketplace open to other providers who did the same kind of rental. So they ended up owning the space for rental of these big machines. And they did so many things at the same time, updated their ERP, changed it. They knew what their core business was, and they were like, okay, we can move it to something. They could define this space, and they could also own the ambiguity of it countrywide, right? I was super impressed because there was a vision, but execution, and it didn't seem like they were ambiguous because the why was so clearly defined. So they could just move in different streams, say do. But it was a full transformation in the end. Right, because they could define what did they want to own and was it possible. Of course, maybe if in the end no one would have used their platform, okay, that would have failed, but they would still have optimized their own fleet, right? So
what you are saying is then that the parameters has been clear in the sense of they had a vision and a mission, and the rest was clear for them. They can explore what would be the best way, and then they came up with that platform.
And maybe, and now I don't mention names because I don't know anymore then, but I was just impressed by it. But the point is that also they didn't necessarily, if they hadn't managed to get all the other providers to use their platform, as I said, they would still have gotten a huge benefit from just doing it on their own, you know. And I think that's interesting. So the business case was just positive no matter what, but with an option for more. Right.
Yeah.
And that I think that's interesting because that means that they could define something. Say, like you said, with the warehouse, we will automate our warehouse. What if you said, okay, but then maybe there's a possibility to add more, if it was IKEA furniture producers to the IKEA warehouse as well. Oh, that could be an upside, right?
No.
Perhaps. But we know we need to do it anyway because we own this space. So the ownership, the definition of the warehouse or of our own stock, right? Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm. What was if you had the opportunity to look behind the process, do you know the one single thing from a leadership point of view, what makes it that successful?
No, I don't know in this particular case, right? But I think the case is interesting. I think there's been more of those cases, right? But sometimes you will see something like this from a big tech company or something like that doing something. We want to, like Airbnb owning. So the modern version always being floated around is these companies that are Airbnb that doesn't own any flat, Uber that doesn't own any cars, Spotify don't own any music, Netflix, you get my point. Netflix does own movies, but and Facebook do not create any content, so on and so on. But here's just a case of the opposite, right? Which is also happening all the time. With some companies saying that, we own this, we do this, and now we're going to do it differently in a better way. So you don't necessarily have to be these almost synthetic digital companies to do big digital transformation. I think we're sometimes too focused on stories of Blockbuster and Kodak and these bad examples and the really, really good examples, the unicorns that we forget about, the incremental, the close to home transformations that can actually make a huge impact for our customers and for ourselves, right? And that's why I think this story is quite interesting because you just had a market, you had some machines. What could you do, right?
Yeah, and therefore it's good also to talk about these good examples. And it was interesting what you have maybe heard from your guests or whatever, because we tend to talk about only the things which are not working.
But what is not working is always, that's a negative definition. And I believe of course you have to believe. It's not something I believe in, but negative definitions are how you define a thing. This table is a table because it's not a chair, right? So by saying what is the bad thing, we also end up defining what is the good thing, right? And what I want to also get to, a little bit is about what do we actually need to make sure that the culture is actually working for us, right? And the culture is not just something we say as we need culture, right? Culture becomes a grasp all thing, right? People talk about skills as well right now, a lot about skills. What skills do we need in the future? I spoke to a business leader some months back who said that he wished he just had a lot of these young, innovative, digital, tech-savvy people in his department because then everything will be fixed instead of having people who were So, they did the things they always did, right? And I said, yeah, but you don't need that. You need maybe 10% of those kind of people. The rest of them, you need to actually just have accountable people who will do whatever they're supposed to do every day, But is he right? Do we need these smart, people all the time? Sounds to make it sound like a sprint. But what skills do we need in the future, Melanie?
Yeah, I see it maybe in the direction, as you mentioned it. You need them, of course, but you don't need your whole department with these kind of people. I strongly believe in the diversity of a team, definitely, and the kind of skills you mentioned. Of course, this tech savvy. Of course, you need that, but you also need people who keep the culture still alive in an organization, and who also take the accountability and get the everyday stuff done. From a leadership perspective, I believe that the more human part of leadership gets more important. What do I mean with that? I mean, I will be not the fastest anymore delivering answers, facts, analysis, figures, assumptions, because this can be done by AI much quicker. But being the glue, bringing a team together, holding a team together, acting with the values, delivering into our culture, into the company culture, facilitating and definitely giving teams orientation and clarity. Coming back to that, what I mentioned in the beginning, people are losing so much energy and get so frustrated if everybody is running around talking about change, transformation, and everybody feels lost because everything is unclear. It is not that everything is unclear, but leaders need to create this clarity about what is clear, what is said, what is unclear and need to be clarified, and who is responsible for what. That the people has the convenience and also the trust. Okay, these might be unclear, but we have clearly defined who is responsible to figure it out, for instance.
Also with AI, Melanie, right?
Yeah, also with AI.
So instead of going around saying AI innovation changed and be clearly defined on purpose, where and why, is that what you're saying?
Say it again, please.
So are you saying that we should also with AI be the same, not going around saying AI innovation change, move, but also saying purpose, why? And because the last 3 years have been very about AI, right? And very much about AI will change the world. And but you're actually saying that is a wrong approach.
I know what I'm saying is, it might change things, but it's not changing everything. It's about our leadership, how we lead AI. And if we take the ownership and the leadership, the clarity, and define the preconditions or the framework, we can also steer how it is developing. For sure, there will be parts which are maybe developing in another direction we expected. But then again, as leaders, we need to take the responsibility, the ownership, and to clarify. Maybe take a culture or team building exercise instead of going to an AI conference. Or what do you think? And also because now I forgot what you mentioned with there was something with the AI and exactly. You also need to be concrete with the team. If everybody just coming up with a bubble like, but AI will change everything, or AI will take my job. Okay, let's sit down. Let's put it together. What exactly will AI change? Or we want to implement AI. Okay, what exactly will you implement and why? So start to define maybe the use cases and explore it together with your team. If for this use case, AI might be the right solution, or maybe it might be other.
The funny thing is, you sound like, some of the things I'm seeing in the market is people are like complaining that CFOs think like you just said, right? CFOs think like, where do you want to change? What is the use case? What do you want? Who should own it? And people are complaining that CFOs need to be more future focused, maybe especially in this AI transformation, technology, innovation. We are on an extreme S curve, just move. And now you're coming back and you're sounding almost like a CFO, right? What are the use cases? What is the value? What is the purpose, right? Are you a CFO, Melanie? Are you an executive board advisor? What are you actually here, right? Or do we need more CFOs? Do we need less CFOs?
That's a really interesting feedback. I've never heard that I'm like a CFO, but maybe this is something because especially of this AI topic.
Yeah, because you become the opposite, right? You become sort of, the antidote.
Exactly. This is what I just want to say, because it's that everybody and everywhere since 3 years is talking about these buzzwords. Yeah. And then if you try to clarify or to make the road a little bit more clearer for teams, it helps when you start to clarify. I'm definitely with you. Of course, you should not regulate it too much, like the government tried to do it, especially in Germany and so on. Yeah. I heard that. Of course, I was like, oh my God, can we first try what is possible? Yeah. So explore it much more before you start to regulate it.
Yeah. But I think Eva on the podcast is not out yet, but she said that companies, especially big banking, insurance, pension companies, funds are looking for regulation because they're afraid of doing things if it could be illegal tomorrow, right? So there's also a lot of companies waiting for that regulation to say, okay, this is the playing field. You talked about the playing field earlier. For a lot of companies, regulation and compliance is the playing field.
Yeah. We are there in the meanwhile. That's true.
Yeah. So I just think regulation is so easy to point fingers at, but I also think that people forget that there's adoption power in regulation as well, because now you say, this is the playing field. Okay, good. Let's move inside it. Let's do things there. Okay, it's a weird, narrow playing field. All right, but let's try to play ball.
Yes. And this is then the reason why so many companies have in the meanwhile this shadow AI, because in the beginning everybody was saying, no, stop, we cannot use ChatGPT. We want to develop our own ChatGPT, for instance, which took years. And then, of course, the people are using the AI in, you had lots of this shadow AI. Yeah, maybe it's really interesting that you say that I'm sounding like a CFO. It's maybe really. Yeah,
I can see Melanie here. Since I said that, you've been smiling and been a little bit like, really? Is that me now? You're almost thinking like, maybe I should go open up Excel. Oh, God forbid. But no, I'm joking. But you seem utterly flabbergasted that I called you that.
It's really interesting, because if you're normally the person who really loves to explore and also looking 10 years ahead, and then it becomes, you get maybe like this, if everybody and everywhere is talking about AI, but it's not really talking concretely about, and people are getting nervous or still afraid about if they are losing their jobs.
Yeah, and I think, half an hour back in this podcast, you said, but people should look far ahead. But I actually think most of the things you've said is that, people should not look that far ahead. I don't really care, and I don't think you do either, what you've seen in your sci-fi movies. What is the value, the purpose, the clarity, the definitions right here, right now? What are we going to do with that? And how should people expect this change to change their world? Because in the end, culture doesn't eat strategy. You have no strategy if you don't have culture, right? That's the problem, I think. And if you don't embed it in something that makes sense for people, you don't get it. You don't get that AI strategy. It doesn't make any sense.
But does it not make sense to see it like this? You explore. This is also like you are starting with any project or your business plan. You explore first, and then you put it in your form. You know what I mean? You make your scenario planning, and then you're talking about, okay, we will do the last mile by drones now. And then you're coming back in the moment when you need to put it on the street and to define the goals and the frameworks. And then you maybe figure out it doesn't fit to our culture or to our vision.
But let's also be a little bit clear, right? In the end, companies, they they live in a financial statement as well, right? To some extent. So if you end up saying like we don't and CFOs are not just CFOs of like 20 years ago. There's this business partnering, right, going on as well. Everyone from finance. I usually say everything touches finance. We're also finance or CFO consulting house. Basico is very focused on the CFO. So obviously I mentioned that person, but everything actually touches that function in a company. Right, everything, every silo, every department has touch points with it, and all the financial data, all the data, transactional data, all the things that is happening, going out and in, good KPIs, good marketing campaigns, everything ends up being something that ends in the CFO space and ends in an annual statement. This worked, this didn't work. And if you end up saying like, oh, let's spend a lot of money on something that doesn't make sense, that the CFO thinks is a bad idea, you can be quite sure that will also kill your culture, because culture is also like, does this make sense for us to do? Is there a purpose to it? And as a company, we are interested in making money and continuing to live. So there's the purpose and the use cases, and the CFO mindset cannot be sort of unraveled, right? They're connected. That's why, when you say these things, use cases and actual impact, that's the CFO mindset, right? That's saying, what do we want to do? What do we want to change? Can I expect it to have an impact on our performance in 3 years, 5 years? Just give me an idea, right?
But I think there's also a difference. If you're talking about exploring and maybe completely changing your business model, looking that far in the future, sitting in the room with people discussing these, but of course you need to do that. As a leader, or if you are talking to coworkers who are afraid, and you as a leader, you need to take the responsibility, again, creating that orientation through clarity with them. You see, it doesn't make sense for me if half of your organization get afraid because AI will take all our jobs. And then I see my responsibility, although I may be just coming from a 2-day conference where we open up our minds and we're thinking about, okay, how can our business model look like in the future? Or how will we change our business model through AI? What's possible through AI? And so on and so on. But then on the other hand, maybe this is also kind of a misunderstanding when I'm thinking on when I'm coming back and people are really unclear. And this is the frustration what I realize in the moment in lots of companies when I talk to CEOs or to the executive teams, that people are coming with that concerns, losing their jobs or they be replaced by a job. And then you need to provide this clarity. As a leader, you need to be able working in this direction, seeing the bigger picture and the future, but also making clear what is clear yet and what we can working on for the next 12 months. You see my point? Does it make sense? Yeah,
but you need to do both, right? But you need to, I think the word orientation is good, right? You need to make sure people know where to turn their heads. And exactly. If you're telling them, you don't know, AI is coming for everything, just look everywhere, then you're making anxiety instead of purpose-driven leadership. This is the
point where I was coming from. Thinking about the maturity of people in your organization, and they're afraid about it, and you need to give this kind of orientation. It's the job of a leader.
So if I have the final question, but just before that, Melanie, based on all your experience and your discussions with executive leadership, what is your primary advice for anyone right now starting to work on a big digital technology AI project? Like transformation, what is the key primary advice? Don't forget, or please remember, or start by whatever. What is your advice?
Start by involving the people who are attached. Means the coworkers, the majority of people, suppliers, customers. So everybody, all the main stakeholders, involve them from the beginning, definitely. When it comes to AI, transformation, give them a lot of space and a platform to test and learn. I think this was also something we totally underestimated with the omnichannel transformation. We ordered all these devices and then we put them on the sales floor and all coworker got the device and okay. And then they felt completely unsecure what I can do. And they need to test and learn in front of the customer. Huge mistake. And this would be the second advice. Give this platform, this room for testing and trying and make mistakes, a lot of mistakes, before you then take the AI out for the rollout.
Give room for mistakes. Make sure people know what's coming before it's coming.
Yes, and also make them part of the development, because you cannot decide on a huge AI transformation maybe just from a green table. You need to involve all the key stakeholders.
But this sounds so slow, Melanie. Oh,
I know.
Time is the big constraint.
No, I think it sounds so slow, but it's a question of how, first of all, how you organize it. And secondly, I think on the long run, it saves you time. Just coming back to this 70% or 80% of transformations, which has not worked. What was the reason? Because we've not involved the people, and then they hesitate to use the technology, or they don't know how to use the technology. And what is then happening? You need to plan it again, to roll out it again, and then one digital transformation followed the other. So I'm not convinced about it costs too much time. It's the opposite. You save time. It might take a little bit longer in the beginning, in the preparation phase, but then you win time through the rollout. The second thing is, what I personally experienced is you create much better solutions.
Make sure, when you said that, we all need to own and define it, right? So that's the thing. You need to make sure people can own and define what this digital transformation means to them, right?
Right. You should do that also with the different departments, because everybody has a part of it. And
I actually personally also like that you mentioned your suppliers as well. I think there's been a lot of transformations out there and changes where you've made this enterprise architecture change. You've made a change internally, but most companies are cross-company architectural, right? They live in ecosystems with other companies, and what does it matter if Walmart sort of optimized everything if every little supplier now has to comply to a system that it's not integrated with their systems, right? And then they're just pushing on the pushing down the monkey, down the chain. That's what we would say. I would say that, but you're just taking the problem and pushing it to someone else, right? And I think we need to ensure that you're easy to work with all around, right? For everyone. I think that's the interesting thing, and that's why you need to involve people.
And also from the different contexts, because you cannot use the same presentation for all the different audiences.
No.
And if you want to invite them to think about how can you contribute to that future customer experience with all the things we are planning now around this omnichannel or digital transformation. So what is your part of your contribution? Think about it. What does it mean, but also what does it take from you?
So on that note, Melanie, I'd say it's been a real pleasure to have you. I think we've been driving around the concept of digital transformation, AI transformation. We've been doing a lot of rounds, diving deep here and there, but sometimes you need to do that also to uncover the concept, right? So because it can easily become something you say in simple statements, where there's lots of ambiguity everywhere. And I don't know if we've made this is the solution, but we've added perspectives that should make people more informed about what they're doing. So I've actually really enjoyed having this conversation, and it's also made me think about a lot of things going forward on the whole. Ownership is clarity. I still think that's a good phrase and orientation and. Just exactly what it means to say culture. I think that's also an interesting thing we've been discussing. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, Melanie, I've enjoyed having you on, and I think it's been a brilliant conversation. And I only have one final question for you. Are you ready for that question?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Shoot out. The Big Bang.
Yes.
Now it's coming.
So, Melanie, what is the only constant?
What is the only constant? For me, the only constant is not just about change itself. The only constant, you can say, is the moment certainty disappears. And if I'm reflecting my career, different industries, different roles, there have been always strategies stop working or assumptions fall apart. But what constantly stayed was the need for leadership. Coming back to leadership and also taking the ownership, not for the answers, definitely, but to create this, the orientation for the organization, the orientation for your team to take the responsibility and to lead with this orientation and with the ownership, not having all the answers. But for me, this task hasn't changed and will not change also for the future.
So the only constant is the moment certainty disappears, or the need for orientation. I think you said that. I think that was very interesting. You said the moment certainty disappears is still constant. Really?
Yeah. Yes.
That's quite aggressive, right? That always happens. Certainty will always disappear.
Yes, and it just has become more frequent. If you think about 10 years ago, I think it's really amazing. If I'm reflecting on my jobs and in the different industries 10 years ago in a company, I mean, now I'm an advisor, but still in the context with the companies, it's amazing. It just has become more frequent. But still you have these moments where certainty disappears. Yeah.
And then you have to reinforce certainty, and you have to and then it disappears, and then and it keeps on moving like that.
Start again.
It's cyclical, right? It's life, death, cosmic balance, but.
Well, but that task hasn't changed, is it like this? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for that constant. Thank you so much for being with me on The Only Constant. It's been a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Lasse. It was my pleasure, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.